Two Bobbies, a true story of Hurricane Katrina, friendship, and survival. Kirby Larson and Mary Nethery. Neither Bobby the dog nor Bobcat has a tail, and some say that's what brought them together. No one knows for sure how they met. Perhaps their owner had a soft spot for pets with no tails. But the two Bobbies, as they've now come to be known, were each exactly the friend the other needed at exactly the right time, and this is their story. The city of New Orleans on the mighty Mississippi is a place many people and pets call home. Jamming with jazz and dressing up fancy for Mardi Gras, it bustled with life day and night. But on August 29th, 2005, Hurricane Katrina bore down on the city and everyone who lived there, including a wisp of a cat and one puppy. Look at all that flood. Winds roared to 110 miles an hour, which means that was a very significant hurricane. Rain poured hard and fast. Strong winds pushed walls of water from the Gulf of Mexico into Lake Pontchartrain. Some of the levees holding back the lake gave way. Water poured into the city deeper and deeper. People who had stayed through the storm were finally forced to leave their homes. They had to say goodbye to everything they loved. Many were told they could not take their pets. Bobby and Bobcat were left behind. Bobby had been tethered with a length of a chain. Bobcat stayed by her side. Together, in the silent heat, they waited for help to come. After the storm, volunteers from across the country came to New Orleans to lend a helping hand. They brought food and water. They rescued people stranded on the roofs of their homes, and they rescued many animals. Look at them. So cute. But with so much damage and confusion, the two Bobbies were not rescued. Their food and water gone, Bobby finally broke free. She dragged along the broken chain with Bobcat close behind her. Look at all the damage. In the early days after the hurricane, the two Bobbies tried to make their way around oily water littered with debris. After the wet waters had receded, they traveled the buckled streets with no place to call home. And look at, you can see some of the flooding still going on. Month after month passed as Bobby and Bobcat wandered the devastated city. Their days and nights were filled with danger. Packs of hungry, homeless dogs roamed the streets, fighting smaller animals for food. Were Bobby and Bobcat chased away from any scraps they might have found? With little food to eat or clean water to drink, Bobby's ribs began to show, and Bobcat's brown sugar markings started to fade to dull white. You can see, I don't know if you guys realize, but when cats aren't getting their nutrients, their colors, they'll start to change a little bit. One day in January, 4 long months later, Bobby and Bobcat strayed onto a job site. A construction crew hammered and sawed, fixing up a motel damaged by the hurricane. A worker's dog rushed over to play with Bobby. The dog's owner, Rich, noticed Bobcat too. He saw how thin the two strays were, and he began feeding them. He trimmed Bobby's chain, leaving enough to jingle on the ground because Bobcat seemed to like following it. But every time Rich tried to touch Bobcat, Bobby growled. Rrr. After a week of caring for the two Bobbies, Rich got some bad news when his boss came to the job site. He had given permission for one dog, but not 2 dogs and a cat. He said Bobby and Bobcat had to go. Rich was determined to take them to a safe place, but Bobby still growled whenever Rich got too near Bobcat. She would not let him pick up or even touch her friend. So Rich rattled a bowl full of kibble. Bobby followed the food to Rich's van, and Bobcat followed Bobby. Rich drove them to a temporary shelter that Best Friends Animal Society had set up in Celebration Station, a former video game arcade. The shelter was completely filled with homeless dogs and cats, but a volunteer welcomed them in, even naming them Bobby and Bobcat for their bobtails. They were placed in separate rooms. How do you think that's going to go? All night long, Bobby howled and barked. Bobcat paced back and forth. No one could sleep with Bobby making such a ruckus. So volunteers made a large pen for her and put Bobcat in his small carrier beside Bobby's new cage. Bobby lay in front of Bobcat and whimpered. The volunteers opened the small cage to see what would happen. The two Bobbies touched noses together again at last. They were best friends. So sweet. For the next few months, the volunteers studied Bobby and Bobcat. They noticed how Bobcat stayed close to Bobby. They saw how he walked with his neck stuck out and how he carefully lifted his front paws, placing them down as if he were unsure of what he might step on. Someone waved a hand in front of Bobcat's face. Bobcat did not jump back. Another volunteer waved her hand, but Bobcat did not even blink. Everyone was stunned. Bobcat was blind. All that time on their own, Bobby had been Bobcat's seeing eye dog. Sweet. Volunteers and even an ace pet detective searched for their family with no success. 1 month later, Celebration Station closed its doors, but Bobby and Bobcat still did not have a home. There was only one thing left to try. The two Bobbies made a television appearance on CNN's Anderson Cooper 360. The very next day, the Best Friends volunteers left New Orleans. One of them drove Bobby and Bobcat to the Best Friends Animal Sanctuary in Utah, where they would stay until a new family could be found. They were on their way west when the news came in. Hundreds of people wanted to adopt them because they're so cute. There they are, spend the night with Melinda, which is right there. It would take a very special family to adopt them together. The volunteers made a list and invited everyone on it to come and meet the two Bobbies. Only Melinda and her Boston Terrier Gus Gus made the long trip to Utah. That night, Bobby and Bobcat had a sleepover with Melinda and Gus Gus in one of the cottages on the sanctuary grounds. Would the two Bobbies choose Melinda? The next morning, everyone knew the answer. Bobby and Bobcat were stuck to Melinda like Velcro. They also liked Gus Gus, and he liked them. Finally, Bobby and Bobcat had found their new family. Now they live with Melinda, Gus Gus, and Amelia on a ranch in southern Oregon. Bobcat has a window seat to sit in. He likes to play with the robot vacuum cleaner. He turns it on all by himself. Bobby helps with the ranch chores. She goes along on the horse rides. On hot days, she lounges in the frog and fairy pond. At the end of every day, Bobby and Bobcat snuggle up together. They have toys and treats and lots of friends, even a camel. But best of all, they have each other. And this is a real picture of them. Oh, are they so cute? Like thousands of others, the two Bobbies lost their family and everything dear to them when Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans. After they came to live with Melinda and Gus Gus, their veterinarian discovered debris and grit deep inside Bobcat's ear canals. His right eardrum was broken. Did Bobby snatch Bobcat from the dirty floodwaters that had filled New Orleans? No one will ever know, but it is very likely that a blind cat like Bob would not have made it without Bobby's protection. In turn, Bobcat's friendship may have made Bobby stronger and given her a reason to go on. Bobby and Bobcat survived Hurricane Katrina. They did it by lending each other a paw.